every day brings another jaw-dropping moment. So we kind of take it in our stride now. It's like, oh, yeah, another interesting potential appointment. It's so hard to keep up with. But like I said, it's just run of the mill these days.
Now, I want to cross over now to the United States because there's news there to talk about, some of it extraordinary, all of it seems to be extraordinary. But Charlotte McDonald-Gibson's joined us now on the line, the US correspondent for the Times. Hello, Charlotte.
Hi, Don.
Hi, lovely to have you here, Charlotte. A few things to talk to you about, if we can, in the time that we've got. One of them is a story that you've been following, and it looks like another one of those remarkable stories. Robert F. Kennedy, who ran for the nomination for president. He ran for the presidency and then he dropped out, fell in behind Donald Trump. Now he's the pick for health secretary in a new Trump administration. But he's got a wish list of his own, which he's presented to Santa Donald. Tell me about that.
That's right. So RFK, as we call him, he would like President Trump to appoint his daughter-in-law, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, as the deputy director of the CIA. And why is this? Well, this is because RFK believes that his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated with complicity from the CIA. So it's one of the many conspiracy theories that Robert F. Kennedy has touted about over the years. But he thinks if he can get his daughter-in-law into that position, then she can get down to it and unveil the real truth behind the JFK assassination. So that's the story today. So it's fascinating to dig into why he's doing this and who this woman is as well. She's a fascinating character.
Charlotte, if I told you, if I told you that my jaw was dropping at this story, I'd be lying, because it isn't. Because absolutely extraordinary stories seem to be absolutely normal just now. And you've now got RFK, who features, or if Donald Trump gets his way, will feature in the cabinet of the next president, who wants his daughter to be at the top of the CIA to investigate one of his many conspiracy theories. How's that story going down there in the USA, Charlotte?
Well, like you said, it's just every day brings another jaw-dropping moment. So we kind of take it in our stride now. It's like, oh, yeah, another interesting potential appointment. It's so hard to keep up with. But like I said, it's just run of the mill these days.
Yeah. And what's Trump and his team saying?
They're not saying anything at the moment. But the New York Times is reporting that Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, that she met Trump last week. So it's not just, speculation at the moment. It looks like, the cogs are moving. And I would say that, well, what do we know about Trump and who he gives jobs to? It's people that have been loyal, people that helped him get to where he is now and will be indeed on January 20th.
Yes.
And Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, she actually helped orchestrate RFK's, move over to Trump's side, his support for Donald Trump, his backing for Trump.
Yes.
So she has that in her favor. She's pulled some strings for him.
And she is also, Charlotte, she's also a former CIA employee, isn't she? And was married to another CIA officer. While working undercover in Shanghai. So that is actually relevant experience, and she's got that not in common with some of the other big pigs.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, actual experience for the position she's applying for. It's quite unusual in this cabinet. But indeed, her backstory is fascinating. It's like, it screams Homeland to me, to be honest. She's like a real life Carrie. I mean, she was posing as a sort of glamorous art consultant based out of Shanghai, traveling around Asia, hobnobbing with arty types. But in fact, she was meeting with jihadis, with terrorists, with arms dealers, trying to keep sort of weapons of mass destruction, bomb materials out of the hands of terrorists. So she has a good decade of very relevant experience. But there's also a flip side to that, because she wrote a sort of tell-all memoir about this in 2019. And if there's one thing that the intelligence community doesn't like, it's people telling people about it. So that's a sort of, a black mark against her when she's going for this job.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, another one before we move more generally on how that process is going. Another story, just in the last 24 hours, Kari Lake, who ran for the Senate in the state of Arizona. She has been named, hasn't she, Charlotte, as Donald Trump's pick for to be the leader of Voice of America. That is the congressionally funded broadcaster in America with a stated remit to be independent of politics. And Donald Trump wants Kari Lake to be the boss.
Yes, that's right. As you said, every day brings another appointment that puts shockwaves through different sectors, and certainly in the media world, having Carrie Lake in that position. But MAGA loyalist, it's not what anybody really wanted, but I think it's what people were expecting. I'd spoken to VOA correspondents just this last weekend, and they knew something like this was coming. So what impact does that have on
Yeah.
VOA's operations around the world? At one point, it was very respected. It was like the BBC, but it's not going to be anymore. So it's definitely, like you said, another surprise.
Without naming them, I wouldn't dream of asking you to do that. But your friends at the VAA, Voice of America, what do they actually think of this likelihood? Is it a likelihood? Do you think she'll get the job?
Well, that's the question with all of these nominations, isn't it? And you look at them and you think, oh, they couldn't possibly. But then if you look at, for example, Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary nomination, who, was a Fox News commentator, and all these allegations have come out about misbehavior, drunkenness, allegations of sexual impropriety. And so, last week there was this thinking, well, he couldn't possibly make it through the nomination process. But then, this morning, suddenly he's convinced everybody. So I think I'm never going to say, well, this person won't, this person will, because again, there's a surprise every day. And so I think if somebody isn't, hugely controversial, doesn't have like something that's endangering national security,
Yeah.
then most of his picks are going to be approved. And of course, not all of them need Senate approval. For example, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy in the CIA as the deputy, she doesn't need Senate approval. So,
Yeah.
there's different processes for different positions.
Yeah. All right. Charlotte, lovely to talk to you. Join us again soon. Do. Charlotte McDonald-Gibson there, US correspondent for The Times.
A lot of people ask me why I left the Democratic Party. And I say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. This is not the party anymore of Martin Luther King, of Robert Kennedy, of John Kennedy. That was the party of peace. It was the party of constitutional rights, of civil rights, of freedom of speech. It was the party that wanted to protect and nurture the middle class. It was the party that stood up to censorship, to surveillance, stood up to the CIA, to the military-industrial complex. And it was the party that wanted to protect public health and women's sports.